The plywood floor of the forward operating base's operations tent echoed under heavy boots, each step steady, deliberate, unyielding. Maps lay scattered across tables, radios buzzed with static, dice rolled idly in a corner, until the sound of those boots cut through. Conversations faltered, dice stilled. Even the hum of the generator outside seemed to fade. Gunnery Sergeant Elena Torres, female Marine, mid-30s, lean and dust-worn, had entered. She wasn't tall. She wasn't built like the men who filled the tent. Her uniform was streaked with dirt, her rifle slung like an extension of her arm. To the untrained eye, she looked unremarkable, forgettable. And that was the very reason whispers clung to her name. A cluster of Navy SEALs, male operators, cocky and broad-shouldered, leaned back in their chairs, smirks tugging at their lips. One tilted his head toward her. "That's her? The ghost they keep talking about?" A chuckle followed, spreading like a ripple. The Marines seated around the tent weren't much different. Doubt clung to their faces. They'd all heard the rumors. A Marine who moved unseen through ambushes, who struck with precision and slipped away like smoke. A sniper who pulled squads out of impossible traps. But rumors were easy. In front of them now stood a woman who looked ordinary. At the far end, General Marcus Steele, male, late 50s, chest broad with rows of ribbons, face carved by decades of war, rose from his chair. His stare cut like a knife. 30 years in the Army had hardened him into a man who believed in results, not myths. He didn't trust whispers, and he despised legends. Legends made soldiers reckless. Ghosts got men killed. And yet, even Steele noticed it. The instant Torres entered, the atmosphere shifted. Marines sat straighter, as if pulled by invisible thread. Even the SEALs, unshakable and cocky, had gone silent for a heartbeat too long. Gee, something about her, silent, steady, unbending, was enough to make the room's pulse falter. Steele hated it. "You!" His bark ripped through the tent like artillery fire. Torres stepped forward, unflinching. Her boots thudded on plywood, shoulders squared, her face calm. "Name, unit." Her reply was sharp, controlled. "Gunnery Sergeant Elena Torres, 1st Recon, sir." Steele's jaw twitched. Too crisp, too perfect. He wanted more. "Not good enough. Call sign." The air thinned. Marines exchanged quick glances. A SEAL shifted upright, his earlier smirk gone. The whispers that had haunted chow halls and convoy rides, traded in bunkers and behind helmets, pressed down on every man in the room. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone wanted to hear it. Everyone feared it. Torres didn't blink. She lifted her chin. Not in arrogance, but in certainty. Her voice was even, stripped of bravado. "Specter Six." The words didn't thunder. They didn't need to. They carved the tent open like a blade. Smirks evaporated. Marines who had scoffed minutes earlier dropped their gaze. One SEAL who had lounged lazily now sat rigid, his jaw clenched. Even General Steele froze. He had seen the call sign before, in classified reports buried in cabinets. Stories of rooftop teams silenced in Kabul, of ambushes broken by a ghost moving through dust and fire. He had dismissed it as exaggeration. Soldiers made myths to explain survival. But the myth stood in front of him now, flesh and blood, her eyes steady, unyielding. The silence was absolute, and in that silence, a legend exhaled its first breath. Legends aren't told. They're proven in fire. If you believe soldiers like Torres deserve to be remembered, hit that red subscribe button now so you never miss these true military stories. Weeks before the silence in that tent, Kabul's alleys had already whispered her name. It began as a routine patrol. The streets were narrow veins of stone and dust, shadows stretching long in the late afternoon sun. Gunnery Sergeant Elena Torres, female Marine, walked point, her rifle raised, eyes cutting from rooftop to alley corner. Children peeked from doorways with unreadable stares. It was too quiet. Torres felt it. Silence wasn't safety in Kabul. Silence was the knife before the strike. Then the trap sprang. Gunfire erupted from the rooftops. Windows shattered, glass raining down like shards of ice. Marines scattered for cover, diving behind charred vehicles and broken walls. Bullets punched into stone, ricocheting sparks into the air. Radios crackled with panic. "Man down! We're surrounded." The kill zone swallowed them. Firing arcs locked the street, cutting off escape. Muzzle flashes blazed from rooftops, from side alleys, from doorways that had been empty seconds earlier. But Torres didn't collapse into chaos. Her pulse was steady, her breathing calm. While panic drowned the air, she saw it, the pattern, the way bursts overlapped, the fraction of a second gaps, the blind spot. Without a word, she moved. Flattening to the ground, she crawled forward, dragging herself through glass, dirt, and blood. Bullets sliced inches above her helmet, hot air snapping past her cheek. Her movements were deliberate, every inch earned. Dust stung her eyes, but she pressed on. She slid into the shadow of a collapsed wall and vanished from sight. Moments later, a rooftop sniper fell. A single shot, precise, surgical. Then another, and another. Her rifle barked from impossible and gliss, each round silencing a threat before it knew she was there. Torres became smoke, flowing through Kabul's back alleys, appearing and vanishing, always one step ahead of death. The Marines trapped below began to feel it. The storm of gunfire faltered, confused shouts echoing from the rooftops. A corporal raised his head, disbelief on his face. "She's clearing them!" he shouted. Hope surged. Marines lifted their rifles again, firing into the chaos, dragging the wounded back behind cover. One by one, 12 firing points fell silent. The kill zone unraveled. Torres reappeared minutes later, her uniform streaked with dust and blood, her rifle still warm. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Every Marine in that alley knew who had pulled them from the jaws of death. Not one had been left behind. Later, officers argued in briefing rooms. Some said luck. Some called it exaggeration. But the Marines who had lived it knew better. They whispered her name across convoys, in chow halls, in barracks, Specter Six. The ghost who crawled through fire and returned with every man alive. Back in the operations tent, after the call sign echoed like a thunderclap, General Marcus Steele, male general, leaned forward, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. "Legends," he said coldly. "Break men. Marines will expect you to be unbreakable. If you fall, they'll fall with you." Around them, the tent had gone still. Male Marines shifted uneasily, eyes darting. The SEALs, who only minutes earlier had smirked, now leaned forward, silent, listening. But Gunnery Sergeant Elena Torres, female Marine, didn't flinch. Her voice was low, even, forged in fire. "Then I won't break, sir." The words hit harder than any shout. The silence that followed was thicker than before. Even the hum of the generator outside seemed to die. Steele studied her face, searching for cracks. He'd seen men bluff, seen bravado crumble. But what stared back at him wasn't arrogance. It was certainty. Before the moment could settle, the flap of the tent snapped open. A young lieutenant, male, early 20s, hurried in, clutching a folder tight, his face pale. He dropped it onto Steele's table. "Recon Bravo's gone dark. Last contact, 20 minutes ago. Outskirts of Kabul. High chance of ambush." Every man in the room stiffened. They knew what that meant. A silent unit in Kabul's outskirts wasn't just missing. They were surrounded. Steele didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His eyes locked on Torres. Sergeant Torres, you're on point. The words dropped like a hammer. The SEALs exchanged tense glances. Marines shifted, a mix of dread and reluctant trust filling their eyes. Torres didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. Minutes later, under the dull red glow of convoy lights, the column rolled into Kabul's darkened edge. Engines rumbled low, tires crunching gravel. No one spoke. Inside the armored vehicle, Marines gripped rifles tight. SEALs checked optics, jaws set. Torres sat by the door, helmet tilted slightly down, eyes closed for a moment of stillness. To the men watching her, it looked like calm. But in her mind, maps unfolded. Blind spots, firing lanes, the rhythm of enemy ambushes. She replayed them all. The convoy halted. Boots hit dirt. The night pressed heavy. A single dog barked in the distance, then silence reclaimed everything. Torres lifted a hand. Halt. Her eyes scanned rooftops, shadows, cracked windows. She felt it, the weight of eyes. Then the night exploded. Gunfire ripped from every angle. Windows burst with muzzle flashes, tracers slicing the dark. A Marine dropped hard, dragged back by his brothers. Dust and smoke filled the air, comms screaming. Snipers left! Top right! Pinned again, trapped in the stone jaws of Kabul. But Torres didn't dive for cover. She pressed her back to a wall, breathing even, eyes sweeping the battlefield like a cartographer reading terrain. Angles, gaps, weaknesses. She spotted it. A half-collapsed wall, jagged but climbable. Cover me. Her voice cut through the storm, steady, commanding. No one questioned her. Marines shifted fire, SEALs laying suppressing bursts. Torres sprinted, boots slamming stone. She scaled the wall under a hail of rounds, gripping, climbing, body moving with surgical precision. She crested the rooftop, rolled low, and rose behind the first sniper team. One shot. Clean. Silent. The sniper crumpled before he could turn. She didn't linger. She flowed across the rooftop like smoke, vanishing, then reappearing in shadow. Another shot. Another enemy silenced. Below, Marines felt the shift. The fire that had caged them seconds ago faltered. She's clearing them, a SEAL muttered, awe in his voice. One rooftop after another fell quiet. Escape lanes opened like doors. Marines surged, dragging wounded, firing into gaps that moments earlier had been death traps. From above, Torres laid down fire with the precision of a scalpel, each round carving survival into the night. By the time the last rooftop fell silent, the convoy was intact, bloodied, shaken, but alive. Torres climbed down, her rifle hot, her face streaked with dust. She rejoined the squad without a word. The SEALs stared, no smirks left, only silence. And in that silence, the legend grew. The rooftops were silent now. The echoes of gunfire clung to the air like smoke, but the convoy was intact. Marines pulled each other to their feet, coughing dust, sweat stinging their eyes. Medics knelt quickly over the wounded, hands working fast but steady. And through it all, Gunnery Sergeant Elena Torres, female Marine, climbed down from the last rooftop, boots landing in the dirt with a heavy thud. Her rifle still warm, her uniform streaked with soot, her eyes calm, steady, unchanged. The Navy SEALs, male operators, who only hours earlier had laughed at the rumors, now stared at her in silence. One muttered under his breath, "That's not legend. That's real." The others said nothing. Their silence was louder than belief. By the time the convoy rolled back into base, floodlights cutting across the yard, every Marine was still alive. Bloodied, shaken, but alive. Inside the operations tent, the atmosphere was different than before. No smirks, no whispers. Male Marines who had doubted her stood stiff, as if in the presence of something larger than themselves. The SEALs lined the wall, their faces unreadable, but their eyes fixed on her with something that looked like respect. General Marcus Steele, male general, stood at the head of the table, arms folded, ribbons gleaming under the harsh light. His stare locked onto Torres as she stepped in, boots echoing across the plywood. The silence was heavy, but not mocking now. Steele studied her for a long moment. His face gave nothing away. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of recognition. "Specter Six," he said slowly, the call, sign rolling off his tongue. "You kept every man alive today." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't offer a speech. He simply gave her the smallest nod. And from a man like Marcus Steele, that nod carried more weight than any medal. The room froze. SEALs who prided themselves on being unshakable stood still, eyes lowered. Marines who had mocked her now stared in reverent silence. For a heartbeat, it felt as if time itself had bowed its head. Torres didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She simply raised her hand in a crisp salute. Steele returned it, sharp and short. That night, word spread faster than radio signals. Across Kabul, in chow halls, guard posts, and barracks, Marines whispered with new certainty. Specter Six wasn't a rumor anymore. She was real. Young recruits fresh off the line began carving S6 into their helmets, their rifle stocks, even scraps of paper folded into pockets like talismans. Veterans nodded quietly, telling the story without exaggeration. The Marine who had crawled through hell and dragged them all back alive. And somewhere outside, under the vast Afghan night, Torres sat on a sandbag wall, her rifle laid across her lap. The stars stretched endlessly above her, the same stars she had seen in 100 deployments. Her hand moved slowly over the weapon, cloth wiping dust from steel in calm, deliberate strokes. She didn't bask in the whispers. She didn't crave the legend. She thought only of the men who were breathing tonight because of what she had done. Her voice was low, meant only for herself, and for the stars. "As long as they come home," she whispered. "The name is worth it." The night carried her words away, across the barracks where laughter echoed. Marines alive because of her. Specter Six wasn't just a call sign anymore. It was a legacy. If you had to choose, would you rather be remembered as a soldier or as a legend? Drop your answer below and hit that red subscribe button to keep these true military stories alive.